everyone. Welcome to this solo episode of Death on the Daily, where we are diving into the power of presence, including how we can find presence when we are navigating really challenging and difficult circumstances in life, including in death and grief. And the reason this one is personal for me is because actually I've learned a lot about the power of presence through my experiences of walking the path of someone else dying in my life. So it started when I walked the path with my granddad in his final year. I really, really rooted into the power of presence and the fact that actually that was the greatest gift that I could give him because I couldn't fix anything for him. And each time before I went into his care home, I would stop and set an intention by a little river that's right next to his care home that I was going to show up fully present no matter what, including in those days where it was really difficult to see him in lots and lots of pain. And the other side of my story is my beautiful and painful journey with our darling daughter, Ngako Raiona, who died in 2023. And if you haven't heard the full story of our darling daughter, our little lioness-hearted one, definitely go back and check the first episode of this podcast out. I will link it in the show notes. But just to share a little bit around why presence means so much to me is because we lost our daughter 5 months into pregnancy, and she had a birth defect that wasn't compatible with being able to live earthside. And when I was in the car on the way home from the 20-week scan where we got the devastating news, I was in a real state, understandably, of shock, of raw grief, of just everything coursing through me. But I felt her kicking, and I made a promise to her there that I was going to be by her side no matter what. I was going to be fully present. I made that promise, that set my intention, and to this day, I am still in awe of myself and how I managed to be fully present through her death, through her stillbirth, through her woodland burial. In fact, there was a period of about 3 to 4 weeks, all the way through to her woodland burial and a bit beyond, where I have never been as present in my life as I have been at that point. And that was her gift to me, by way of me setting that intention as a mother. And ultimately what that ended up being was the greatest gift for myself. So this is really deeply personal, but I come into this with also an acknowledgement that sometimes things happen in life where we do disconnect. The body goes into shock. That's totally, totally understandable. That is a normal body response. And in fact, I know this well because I disconnected during the scan. And that's something where I've been seeking therapy support to help me to navigate the PTSD that I have as a result of that. So I come into this conversation just saying, go with lots of grace and compassion, because sometimes we can be present, sometimes we just cannot. But when we are able to call ourselves back into presence, I know from my own experience just how profound and how powerful that can be, and how many gifts that I received as a result of it. And so let's start by talking about what presence is. Now, presence is more than just, I suppose, sitting here in body and sort of engaging, but not being fully attentive. And I want you to think about whether it's yourself or maybe when you've been in conversation with someone else where perhaps you or the other person or both of you haven't been fully present with the other ones. What's going on? Typically, what's going on is we might have our mind that has raced off into either the past or the future, anywhere apart from the present moment. What this can look like is, for example, when we're thinking about our to-do list, about what's to come, we're fretting about something that's coming up on work. I mean, I had many decades of my life where I'm thinking through school and through my corporate career where I had the Sunday scaries, and ultimately me ruminating about what was coming on Monday took me away from the gifts of just being able to be present and to fully just unwind on a Sunday. But the other side of things are that we might be pelting back to thoughts of the past. We might be ruminating on something. And presence really is a difference between sitting with someone and thinking about that to-do list or what's coming up or something that happened yesterday, or scrolling on your phone and being absorbed in a virtual world and not truly being there with the other person and what they're saying. Now, what presence is being fully in it, fully holding space for the other person, really deeply listening. And also, what presence is it's not just listening to someone else, it's also listening to ourselves. And the reason that it's important in both us listening to others as well as listening to ourselves is we live in an age of distraction. And ultimately, that does do harm by way of us not being present for others in conversations and being able to support them through difficult things like grief. But it also compounds into ourselves as well, and how we're not present with ourselves. We drown out that intuitive inner wisdom. We're just a bunch of noise that we fill our life with, whether that's social media, whether that's always having something on in the background. And why this matters when we're grieving is that we live in a really death avoidant culture where grief has been suppressed and where we avoid being with the difficult. That's really a part of everything that I love through my Death on the Daily mission, is just inspiring us to get it out, to talk, to be with that which is painful. But one of the ways that we can avoid being with something that's painful, for example, when we are journeying with someone who is perhaps dying, is that our mind will take us off to anywhere apart from the present moment, because ultimately the present moment feels too painful for us. But I'm here to tell you that if you are going through something difficult, just being able to touch it with presence, just very, very gently, we soon start to realize that we have a greater capacity to hold that which is difficult than we had ever imagined or given ourselves credit for. That was definitely one of the lessons that my darling daughter Ngako Rayona taught me, was actually I can hold it all. I can hold basically my biggest fear coming true, the fact that I could ever lose a child in this lifetime. I could hold it all. And presence really gives ourselves permission to feel. And the gift of that is not only are we obviously feeling the really painful, but also it helps us to feel even more the joyful, the full force of our love and other things that can be quite curious in those times. That was definitely my experience of just observing. Actually, grief brings a lot, but it also does bring a lot of meaning, a lot of joy, a lot of love. There's a full spectrum of emotions that come through. And in allowing myself to be present and to feel, I really allowed myself to feel it all and to truly receive the depth of love that was available to me in that experience. And when we allow ourselves to feel, that really does build that self-compassion, because we can start to have conversations with ourselves that, again, if we're numbing out and if we're avoiding, that we can never have. We can start to show ourselves love, show ourselves care, versus what, I mean, I definitely am calling myself out on this, and I still do it. When I'm in avoidance mode, I just get busy. I subconsciously fill my calendar with as much stuff as possible to avoid myself from being present with how I'm really feeling. But the gift of presence is, it's a call to meet yourself exactly where you are in this moment, no matter what is coming up. So how do we do it? Here are a few very simple ways that you can practice presence on the daily. And I would say, if you can, try and bring these in as a daily practice. I say I'm always rooting into presence. I'm not, I'm definitely not perfect. And there are days where I move through it with a lot of disconnection. But through practices like these, as well as I also do meditation twice a day, I create these powerful spaces and the containers for me to just be with what is. So first up, we've got a really simple practice, and that is breathing with intention. Now, I caveat this because I always want to be mindful of trauma in this. And as someone who's got PTSD, I also want to share that sometimes it's not right for me to connect into my breath. So follow your body's wisdom, follow the cues of what feels right and what doesn't feel right. And for me personally, when I've got the sort of anxious response because my PTSD has been triggered in some way, there's been periods where actually, particularly in the 6 months after Ngako Rayona died, where I couldn't sit and do any form of, not even sort of deeper breath work, but just breath connection. So take this if it feels good. If not, please do leave it. But breath can be a really powerful anchor. So in meditation, breath is often used, and in mindfulness practices as well, breath is used as an anchor to bring you into the present moment. So it's really, really simple, this practice. Just take a few breaths. You might like to deepen your breath, or you might just like to watch your breath as it flows in and out. But all you're going to do is bring all of your focus and attention onto your breath and use that as an anchor to bring you into the present moment. So this practice is really, really simple. We're just going to take a few breaths together. And obviously, if you're not doing this practice, then feel free to fast forward onto the next bit, or just simply sit and just observe your surroundings. So just sitting here comfortably and just taking a few deep breaths, or just watching your breath as it rolls in and out exactly as it is. So just bringing all of your focus and your attention onto your breath and simply watching it as it rolls in and out. And if you catch your mind wandering off at any moment into the past or into the future, just bringing it back onto your connection with your breath. So you might have been able to take about 4 or 5 breaths then. And that is as simple as this practice is at any time of day, whether it's 5 breaths, whether it's 10 breaths, just reconnecting into your breath and watching your mind for when it wanders off. And if it does, bringing it back onto your breath can help to bring you back into the present moment. And as you come back into yourself through that connection to your breath, what I then invite you to do is just bring gentle awareness to perhaps how you're really feeling right now. Is there anything that you can name that maybe you weren't aware of before? And it can be obviously in the joyful as well as it can be in the painful and difficult. And breath connection is also something that we can do at any time of day. And no matter what we're doing in mindfulness, actually, it really is about, again, using breath as one of your anchors into the present moment as you're doing something else. So that perhaps, I don't know, if you're gardening or cooking, you're using your breath as that anchor to then help to bring you into the present moment with the task at hand. So next up, we've got a very simple practice to ground you into your senses. This is something that you can do anywhere. And actually it can be really, really interesting because a lot of the time our surroundings can become a little bit like wallpaper. And again, when we're not really present and when we're so in our head, it takes us away from the anchors of our surroundings and actually a lot of the safety that that can bring. So this is a really simple practice. So firstly, you're going to look around and I want you to just name 5 things that you can see. Hopefully you got those 5 things. Next up, you're going to name 4 things that you can touch. And if you're struggling with this one, it's not about necessarily about reaching out and touching things. It's about, for example, I can feel the chair underneath me. I can feel the fabric on my wrists and all over my body, obviously, because I'm wearing all clothes. I can feel the cold floor under my feet. Next up, you're going to name 3 things that you can hear. And actually, this is a really interesting one because you might need to really tune in to your hearing and to perhaps hear something that is quite far in the distance. Then it's name 2 things that you can smell. Just seeing what you can sense. And this can be a lovely exercise as well to do when you've got a lovely cup of tea or you're eating a bar of chocolate. And finally, name 1 thing that right now you can taste. And again, if you've got that bar of chocolate, you can just pop a little block of chocolate in your mouth and enjoy that taste in this moment. So this can be a really helpful exercise to re-anchor ourselves when we are feeling disconnected from the present moment. It's one that I actually used when I worked in Formula One, and I felt myself really, well, very stressed out with work, to be honest, and running around. I used to reground in the Formula One paddock actually by just reconnecting through my senses, and always had that bar of chocolate for these ones. Fourth up, we've got practicing micro presence. And this is a really, really important one for me. I always talk about the micro moments. And actually, when Tammy Thomas was on my podcast recently, she was also talking about the importance of those micro moments of reconnection. And we often think when it comes to presence, to mindfulness, to meditation, oh my goodness, I've got to do 2 times 20 minutes a day. That is beneficial, but that isn't the be all and end all. And in fact, when we can cultivate these micro practices, like just finding presence for a 5-minute break with a lovely cup of herbal tea, those can be really additive. And the compounding effect is all of these micro moments where we sit with a cup of tea, we say, I'm not going to be looking at my phone. I'm going to be really mindful. I'm going to connect into my breath. I'm going to connect into all of my senses. I'm going to smell that tea. I'm going to feel the warmth of that cup on my hands. I'm going to savor the taste of it. That done, for example, on the daily, multiple times on the daily, throughout a year, it all multiplies and it adds up. And what micro presence as well, when we're connecting with others, could be being with someone else, setting an intention before you go into a conversation with someone that I'm going to be fully present no matter what. I'm not going to be distracted. And finally, for these practices of presence, we've got a reflection ritual at the end of the day. So I love journaling before I go to bed, and I love journaling on my gratitudes and everything that I'm proud of myself for the day. But one of the things that I am now thinking about it as I'm speaking for this podcast, going to be adding in is naming one thing that I felt today. One thing without there being any expectation of it being a success or something I'm grateful for. Actually, I'm just going to name something that perhaps I haven't named before. And taking it away from our accomplishments and rooting it into just what we feel is really profound, because we live in a results-based society where that is the dominant narrative versus how are you feeling? I'm sure you've got those people in your life where the first thing is how's work going? How's everything going? Have you got lots of success? For me, it's always that question of, you got lots of new clients? Yeah, how's that? Versus, how are you feeling right now? What's coming up? So I think if we can cultivate a practice of just being with ourselves, being present with ourselves at the end of the day and connecting into that present moment through reflection to say, how am I really feeling right now? Write it down. There is no judgment here, whatever comes up. And finally, as we close out this episode, I just wanted to share, I suppose, my personal gratitude for the power of presence, including in the most difficult moments. Because I've learned that practice is definitely a presence. I mean, presence is definitely a practice. And when we can practice our presence, what it does is it takes us even deeper into this whole experience that is human life. So just invite you to try on these practices of presence, see which one suits you, see which one you want to take on. Maybe share this episode as well with someone else who you think this could really support, whether they're navigating a difficult journey like a grief journey, or perhaps for those people who just aren't very present in your life. We've all got them, don't we? And I'm ending this episode with my note to self, which is just really, really simple. It's my commitment to myself. I promise that through intentionality, I will continue to practice presence so that I can meet myself in any moment exactly as I am. I'm so grateful to you for spending this time with me, and I would love it if you resonated with this episode, if you could subscribe to my podcast, if you could like this episode, if you could leave a rating and a review. All of that really, really helps me to get the word out there about Death on the Daily. And wherever you are in this journey, know that I'm sending you so, so much love. All of my gratitude to you for joining me for another Dead Conversation. Death on the Daily is edited by David Strutt. The music is Set Free by Katie Gray. And I am Tanya Wilkinson. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would be over the moon if you can rate, review, and subscribe. It really, really helps me to get the word out there. And if you want to say hi or to hear more about my work as a coach and death doula, including how I support my clients to navigate their death on the daily, then all of the ways that you can connect with me are in the show notes. I'll be back soon with some more dead conversations. And in the meantime, take good care of yourself and others.